Miss Cuckoo for Cocoa Pops, Edwina B. Well, God woke me up this morning, and I'm going to say hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. Lord, I give you the praise, the honor, the glory, the worship, and most importantly, the acknowledgement. AJ Harding this morning with Morning Coffee with AJ gave up some, I think it was 7 praise type of things that we can say and do. Listen, you ain't got to tell me at all, because I already know what my God did for me, and is going to do for me, because he delivered me from underneath a parked car 34 plus years ago. From underneath a parked car. Are you kidding me? Yes, I'm going to praise him all day long. Why? Because he chose me. Many are called, but few are chosen. I was chosen, and doggone it, I know it. Why? Because I'm sitting here before you, letting you know that you too can be authentic and transparent. If he has delivered you, and he has, whether you want to acknowledge it or even know it, he has, you will have that knee-bowing experience where you will holler out, yes, he is Lord. Yes, yes, yes. So, welcome to the Free to Hope, that's right, conversation with Edwina B. Free from Recovery Emerge. Could y'all imagine me on crack? Oh, Lord, I tell you, boy, listen, I'm so glad those days are gone. But it's like it was yesterday, so I remember what it was like and what happened and what it's like now. Listen, I am naturally, spiritually high on life. Yes, yes, yes. My heaven is being exercised and executed here on earth, because I've been set free from recovery, emerge empowered, only to give hope to others. That was it. Do I inspire you? Do I inspire y'all? I do get some people who stop me on the street, who text me, who email and say, Miss Bell, you are something, but keep doing what you're doing, because you inspire me, you motivate me. And I tell you, I just go like this. I said, thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord, because I am giving hope to others, help others prosper equally. Okay? And so let's do a recap on some announcements. Okay? I am still getting acknowledgments for my Helen Sabrina Hall, my niece sister, whose services was this past Saturday. And I thank you all. And there were a few individuals who contributed to the fund through House of Right. You know who you are. And I just want to thank you from the depths of my heart. Thank you. I also want to really give praise to our church family, Canaan Baptist Church, where our pastor is no other than Dr. Christopher Allen Bullock, and my First Lady, Dr. Debbie Bullock. My church really, really outdid themselves. But as the musical director says, that's what we do. That's just what we do. So thank you, Canaan Baptist Church. They're celebrating 20 years next month, and I've been a part of their fellowship for 19 years of my 34 years in recovery. Why? Because my attitudes, ideas, and behaviors about church folk, the pastor, the congregation, religion was way off the map. I did not respect, did not like, did not want to be anywhere near religion and religious people. Why? Because of the attitudes, ideas, and behaviors that I witnessed as a child, that I experienced during my addiction, and early into my recovery. Yes, yes, yes. So if it had not been for a dream that told me I needed to find a shepherd, I needed to find a church home, and I needed to join a church family. I was like, what? And then the person that was in the dream behind the podium was a person that some people deemed controversial. And so I went and I selected 3 pastors to interview. Yes, because I needed somebody to explain this dream to me, this interpretation to me, right? And so I just felt that the church and religion had hurt so many people, including myself. And I witnessed it hurting other people. So when I interviewed these 3 pastors, one of them, the very first one, focused more on the man behind the podium and told me to stay away. Well, okay, thank you. The second one I interviewed, as I was sharing my story, he was falling asleep. Thank you, but no thank you. Then I went to the third pastor and I explained my dream. And I had went to him previously about some other issues, right? And so after I shared, he asked me a couple of questions. And then he said, Edwina, this is what I suggest you do. Go back to the source of the dream and ask for direction, clarity, right? Guidance, so that you can get what is there for you to get. And he said, you know why? Because that's the same source I use. And that was no other than Dr. Christopher Allen Bullock, pastor of Canaan Baptist Church, and I've been with him ever since. He did not proclaim to have the answer. He sent me to the source. Sort of like when I send y'all to the source of my spiritual tools, resources, and principles, and other spiritual material, I send you to the source, right? And so I thank my pastor and first lady for embracing people like me with co-occurring disorders. I also joined their substance abuse ministry and have been a part of their Project Mood program, where we administer Narcan training in order to save the lives of those who experience overdoses. But we also inform the community about prevention, intervention, and restoration. So on behalf of my niece/sister, Helen Sabrina Hall, and I thank Canaan Baptist Church for showing up and showing out and contribution to her memorial service. Okay. All right. So now, the other announcement I want to make, right, is that Divine Light, the OP, outpatient, and IOP, intensive outpatient services treatment center, has opened their doors even the more because we were fully approved for our certification and our license. When I say full, no provisions, no corrections, this full. Oh my God. And so I'm just so elated that I was chosen to come there 3 months ago out of retirement to help put the pieces back together of this phenomenal organization that provides services to those suffering from co-occurring disorders, mental illness, and substance abuse. So listen, I am just so happy that the tools, resources, and principles that are spiritual in nature help me to help them put the pieces back together. I want to thank my team. You know who you are, because there's no I in team. We did it all together under the leadership and guidance of our Creator. Okay? So if you're looking for outpatient services, intensive outpatient services, if you are homeless and need somewhere to go while in treatment, come to Divine Light at 1016 Delaware Avenue. I just got a call last night from Ty Robinson with an individual who needed help desperately. And so I talked to the gentleman, because it's one thing for somebody to advocate for you, but it's more important if I talk to the person who needs to be advocating for themselves. And so I talked to the gentleman. He has been directed to go to Divine Light 9 o'clock this morning at 1016 Delaware Avenue. So again, let Divine Light, divine, just the word itself, Divine Light, lets you know that this program is, right, divinely developed, right, implemented, and will provide the spiritual tools, resources, and principles to help you and yours put the pieces back together in your life. Which brings me to my topic today, right? Didn't we hurt anybody? Didn't we hurt anybody? All right, so let me relax here, okay? Let me relax. And let me take a drink of coffee, okay? All right. Now, we've been having some serious conversations these last few days, well, really every day, because through the 12-step spiritual program, the daily reflections, I get messages that I need to share with you. I've been reading it over and over again for the past 34 years, but every time I read it, I get something different, and I get an increase in my spiritual wisdom. Why? Because the spiritual student continues to be ready so that the spiritual teachers can continue to appear. All right. And so we know that we're dealing with step 8, that says, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. All right. So I've been asking you to do a short, brief inventory of your life, right? And identifying some of the character defects that you know you have, right? And in that inventory, we go back as far as we can to find out where those attitudes, ideas, and behaviors were first formulated, by whom, in what situations, circumstances, and how they have perpetuated even up to this day in our lives, right? And so I'm so humbled that I was chosen. I was chosen, y'all. I robbed dead bodies. I stepped over dead bodies. I committed murder as a prostitute. I had an abortion. Yes, because I didn't want to acknowledge who the father was, right? I tried to commit suicide several times. I've been raped, passed around like a bucket, spit on, called all kinds of names, right? I neglected and abused my children and others, right? I conducted some horrific acts way before I started drinking. Why? Because I understand what it means when it says, if you've been smacked, right, and you didn't like the way it felt, well, that seed was planted in my head that says, let me see what it feels like to smack somebody. And so these kind of things that came up in my inventory as a result of people, places, and things that I learned from those I was in the care of, particularly my family and my extended family. All right. So I shared with you an example of the 4th step inventory, resentment against my mom. I told you all about that, right? And I also let you know how and why that resentment started, what situation, what circumstances. I shared with you how that resentment, right, festered over the years. I also shared with you the part that I played in it and what I did and said, right, and felt as a result of having that resentment against my mom, only to be prepared to make amends to her in a very, very special way. Yes. My mother was number 7 out of the 11 family members I've taken care of on hospice, 3 at one time. And I also shared with you about my Aunt Margaret, who I resembled as if she birthed me herself, but how with my Aunt Margaret, she was a different breed than my mother because my aunt was childless, whereas my mother had 6 kids. Okay, so they talked about that, right? So when we got down to step 8, and it says, made a list of all persons we had harmed, okay? All is a key word. See, in recovery, I've learned that if I am to be set free, right, that I have to be willing to rid myself of all the negativity, all the shame, all the remorse, right? All the blame, right? Things that just keeps me bonded in negativity, and to the point where I feel like, what's the use? But because my God chose me, He chose me. He chose me. Because underneath that parked car, getting high with and doing all kind of sexual favors for my own stepson, how more humiliating can it get? But I hollered out in desperation, in humiliation. But in reality, it was my point of surrender, of humility, to say, help me. Whoever they say you are, help me. So being put on this pathway into and part of a spiritual program within a spiritual fellowship that added other spiritual tools, resources, and principles, I have done these 12 spiritual principles over and over and over and over and over again, right? Why? Because every day I am given my daily bread. And so I need to be aware of my attitudes, my thoughts, and my actions, right? And ask myself this question. That's twofold. Edwina, is what you want to say, is what you want to do, is what you want to behave like, is it going to feed the flesh or is it going to feed the spirit? We have a choice. I have a choice. And I'm telling you, there's times when, when 34 plus years, I still may decide and have in the past chose my will, knowing that it's not God's will. And yes, I suffer the consequences, but suffering is not a good word for me. If anything, it lets me know, Edwina, you still have more work to do on yourself. Yes. My humanness is the first thing that is obvious. And my reaction and my defense, right? And my defense, offense, whatever, my humanness comes first because of the nature that I'm human, born into a sinful world and have a sinful nature. However, what I've learned through my life journey is that anything and everything that has happened to me was supposed to happen, and it did happen. Anything that's going to happen is already designed and destined to happen. Yes, okay? And so when I ask myself that question, I have a choice. And you better believe 99% of the time, I choose to feed the spirit. Why? Because I no longer want to hurt anybody. All right? So when we did our 8th step, we got into the making the list of all persons we had harmed. And the second part, it says, became willing to make amends to them all. right? Okay. All right. So let me see. Good morning, Darlene, and good morning, India. Miss Polk, all right? Thank you for joining me. And so listen to this. Have you ever just sat back and looked over your life and said to yourself, wow, what have I done? Wow, who have I hurt? Wow, what am I going to do with my life? Wow, what is it all about? Wow, I'm getting older and my time is running out. What am I doing with my life? What have I done with my life? Right? And I thank God that through my spiritual principles, tools, and resources, that I've learned that God is on sacred time. Do you hear me? Do you understand what I'm saying? God, our creator, is on sacred time. Man is on secular time. But by our humanness, we focus more on the secular time than the sacred time. And all I'm saying is that it's not too late. It is not too late. When the student is ready, the teachers will appear. Like I did on February the 22nd of 1990. The student was ready and the teacher appeared. The teacher put me on a spiritual path so that the spiritual student can become ready for the spiritual teachers to appear. Okay? And so, as a result of that, I need to, people like me who are in recovery, and guess what? All of us are in recovery of some sort because all of us are addicted to something. My pastor the other Sunday talked about be addicted to prayer. Be addicted to going to meetings. Be addicted to being humble. Yes, I'd rather be addicted to those things that's going to bring about spiritual wisdom, spiritual growth, right? Spiritual experiences, spiritual awakenings that will produce an unlimited amount of spiritual breakthroughs. What? We are creatures of habit. Okay, so when we look at step 8, and we ask ourselves all those questions, here's an opportunity to make a list of all persons we had harmed, right? And became willing to make amends to them all. And I shared with you that in order for me to learn how to forgive, to learn how to love unconditionally, to learn how to be patient, to learn how to be tolerant, to learn how to be faithful, to learn how to be loyal, to learn how to be understanding, to learn how to be empathetic, to learn how to be compassionate, I have to apply those things to me first. That makes sense? How in the world can I do and apply all those things, all those characteristics to other people if I had not applied them to me first? That makes sense? Huh? So it's a beautiful thing to know that, listen, I've been without a man and in my past without a woman, for over 5 years. And it's amazing how I learned how to be faithful, true, loyal to me, right? So if it's God's will that he wants me to be united with somebody, then I need to be that which I desire. That makes sense? Right. And so putting myself on the list first paved the way for me to apply those same characteristics to other people. Right. And so our reading for today, it says, Didn't we hurt anybody? All right, so y'all ready to dive into the reading for today? Okay, so let's go. I know I talked a lot, but I had to set the foundation. All right, here's the foundation, right? So here's the reading for today, okay? August the 15th. It says, didn't we hurt anybody? And our co-founder takes a quote from the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions off of page 79 that states, some of us, though, tripped over a very different snag. We clung to the claim that when drinking, we never hurt anybody but ourselves. 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, page 79. I can't wait to dissect that, baby. The person in recovery shares his perspective and says, this step seemed so simple. Step 8. I identified several people whom I had harmed, but they were no longer available. Still, I was uneasy about the step and avoided conversations dealing with it. In time, I learned to investigate those steps and areas of my life which made me feel uncomfortable, right? My search revealed my parents, who I had been deeply hurt by my isolation from them, my employer, who worried about my absences, my memory lapses, my temper, and the friends I had shunned without explanation. As I faced the reality of the harm I had done, step 8 took on a new meaning. I am no longer uncomfortable and I feel clean and light. Oh my God. I want to dissect this bad boy. Y'all ready to get down and dirty? I tell you, Miss Transparent and Miss Authentic, Miss Cuckoo for Cocoa Pops. Let's get down and dirty. All right, you ready? Listen, don't say you ready and you ain't, okay? Don't do that, because I'm going to take you there. Oh, I love it. Okay, so it says here, the very first sentence, right? It says, now, I want y'all to listen, not just hear me, but listen. Some of us, though, tripped over a very different snag. We clung to the claim that when drinking, we never hurt anybody but ourselves. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Now, okay, so check this out. It says we clung to the claim that when drinking, right? When drinking, we never hurt anybody but ourselves. Okay. Now, are y'all ready? Listen. In whatever state you are and were in terms of you being powerless over something, drinking, eating, shopping, sexing, lusting, I don't know. And that addiction made your life totally unmanageable. And it took a long time to admit it, to see it, to accept it, when others were affected by it. Did you hear that? When we were in our addiction, and when we are in our addiction of anything, right? We're in it. We're doing it, right? We're conducting it, right? And so we, the one that is engaged, is the last person to want to see it, can't see it, won't accept it, won't believe it. But there's others around us who are being affected by our behaviors. Did you get that? Right? And so when I think about my addiction, I go back to my childhood during my fourth step. Okay? And one thing in particular was my daddy was very, very abusive. Okay? When my father came in the door, we already knew what was going down. Yep. He had been drinking. He had been whatever. And he comes in the house, right? Going straight to the bedroom to attack my mother, right? And so under the influence, whether he sees us or not at times, because he forced us to sit there and watch. But while he was conducting the harm to my mom, right? He was what? He was in his zone. And maybe didn't care or didn't realize or couldn't see the impact and the effect it was having. Well, on the children, at least. He knew he was whooping my mom's butt, so he knew what she was getting, right? And so when I think about the times when my father came in the house under the influence, right? And this is what he says. He's calmed down. He went to the bar. He had a few drinks, the stress or whatever, that he didn't comprehend what impact or effect it would have on other people, particularly his children. Okay. And so I saw that throughout my childhood, and I experienced it myself. Okay. And so here's the other thing, right? So when other people are impacted, right, or affected by our behavior, and in this case, my siblings and I, right, seeds were planted. And let me tell you in what way. Talking about causing harm. And unknowingly to my father. We as the girls, right? Ruby, Deborah, Carol, myself, right? And different, degrees of perspective, whatever. Let me talk about me. I saw and believed that in order for you to love me, you would have to beat me, because you was going to show me affection afterwards. Not relating it to the addiction, right? What I saw was every time my father, under the influence, would beat up my mom, after it was over, said and done, he would come back and get her, sit her down, and say how sorry he was. Blood coming from her face, her eyes, her nose, her mouth. And he's saying to her, Helen, I'm sorry. You know I love you. Watching this as a child, you're talking about confusion. So because it happened over and over again, I grew up with the notion that if you loved me, you would beat me, you would abuse me, and you would show me affection afterwards, right? My father did not know the harm he was causing. He was unaware, okay? And so even when I think about what this is saying, right? It says here, right? It says, right? We clung to the claim that when drinking, we never hurt anybody but ourselves. Okay. Now, listen, I told you I'm transparent and I'm authentic. It's amazing that even though we thought that our father was an evil man, you know what I mean? And he had all these women and everything. And truth be told, he may have harmed us, but in reality, and I didn't understand it till years later, he harmed himself. This is deep, y'all. He harmed himself because he had to come to the level of awareness of what he did to others, but what he had become and had done to himself. See, that's why this 8th step is so important, because we have to acknowledge, right, that in the midst of us creating hurt and harm to other people, we are the ones who are conducting the harm and hurt, engaging in the harm and hurt. So therefore, what we do to others, we are doing to ourselves. Y'all need to get that book by the Uiz family, right? The 5 Agreements. Yes, listen, and it's true, right? Anything we say or do to others, right, we are really doing to ourselves. And so my daddy, after a while, after life dealt with him, what life had to deal with him, right? He too was hurting inside. Yes, he was, right? And so I haven't even gotten to the second part, but I'm just giving you an example how, right, didn't we hurt anybody? And through these 12 spiritual principles, tools, and resources, oh, hell to the yes. And so many terrible, horrific ways. But guess who is going to feel it? You and me and my dad. Yes. And so my dad realized over the years, because it ate him up inside of what he had done, who he had become, some of the things he did. And I'm sure the self-loathing and the hatred that he may have had for others was really pointed back at him. Okay? I'll share a little bit about that later. Okay? And so when we talk about, right, we never hurt anybody but ourselves, right? So let's go into what the person in recovery says. He says, this step seemed so simple, right? And so when you come from a position of humiliation, degradation, right? Just horrific what, right? Have you ever felt in your life at one point where you were so disgusted with yourself, right? And that feeling overwhelmed me. And what we did majority of the time was to seek the same escape for outside substances, outside crutches that created the problem anyway. But they were not the problem. We were, I was, you was the problem, right? And so now coming into this spiritual program based on spiritual principles, we hear the word, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become so manageable. Oh, that seems so simple, but is it? I was just reading words. That's why words and dissecting things mean so much to me, because I want to understand what the intent of the author was, is, and what he is trying to convey. And so this gentleman, he says off the back, right? This step 8, seemed so simple. He says, I identified several people whom I had harmed, but they were no longer available. Okay, so right away, Mary, Joe, Danny died, right? They're not even here anymore. Okay, so I know I harmed them, but they're gone. So what's the use? You know what I mean? No sense in making amends to them, right? Wrong. If anything or anybody still pops up in your mind, if you recall or recollect anything that you said or did to anybody, whether they did or not, that is an issue that is still haunting you and needs to be resolved. Okay? And so in recovery, we learn that there are different ways to make amends. So he goes on to say, I identified several people whom I had harmed, but they were no longer available. Still, he says, I was uneasy about the step and avoided conversations dealing with it. Okay, so he says, still, even though they wasn't here, he was still uneasy and didn't want to talk about it. But he was talking about it with himself, right? So it didn't matter. He was still being impacted and affected by it. It still haunted him. He was not free. All right. So he goes on and he says, right, in time, I learned to investigate those steps. Right? Let me stop there. He says, in time, we didn't become who we are overnight. It took time. And he says, right, when we look at time and we look at the process of one day at a time, it took time for us to develop these attitudes, ideas, and behaviors that were negative to our spiritual, physical, psychological, mental, emotional development, right? All areas of our life, to the point where all of us one time, and that's only going to happen one time, where we have our only knee-bowing experience, one and only, that we will begin to see in time who I have become. Over time, who have I become? And so he says, right, in time, I learned, y'all. Did you hear that? I learned. And see, this is what this recovery is all about. We have to be willing to face our greatest possession. And our greatest possession is our past. Oh, yes, it is. Yes, it is. Because he says, and we agree, along with the Louise family, right, and the 5 agreements and the 12 spiritual principles, tools, and resources, that in order for us to embrace a new way of life that's spiritual in nature, while encased in this human body on this earth, right? We learned that we have to go back and investigate. We have to go back and recognize what we learned, be willing, right, to unlearn it. Yes, because they was all based on lies. So we had to unlearn what we learned in order to become a new, right, vessel for the new spiritual spirits, right, to occupy this new vessel, but it's the same old vase, right? You have to go, whatever. Y'all understand what I'm saying, right? And so by going back in our fourth step, I had to unlearn some of the things I learned that was detrimental to my spiritual development while encased in this human experience. Okay. And so investigate, right? In time, he had to investigate, right? Those steps in areas of my life which made me uncomfortable, right? Oh, yes, right. Now, listen. Life, I'm finding out, has a way of challenging us, forcing us to look at ourselves in the mirror and beyond. See, yeah, that's why I say don't get caught up in the messenger, get caught up in the message. Because even though I see this is not the story. No, it's not. And so when I need to investigate, right, and conduct research on these spiritual tools, resources, and principles, it's going to bring about a spiritual transformation that will produce a different attitude, idea, and behavior, and will manifest itself accordingly. Okay? And so that's why I love going to my AA program, right? My AA meetings, right? He says anything, right, that makes me feel uncomfortable is good. Oh, yes, 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 yes. It's like ice cream and cake. Anything that makes you feel uncomfortable, you should be saying thank you. Yes, thank you. Because it is letting me know that there's still something going on in my spirit. Yes. So as uncomfortable as it feels, that's a good thing. See, God says your understanding ain't like his. And so anything that makes us feel uncomfortable, we need to investigate. We need to do research. We need to inquire, why does that bother me? When we are willing to get to that level of awareness, then we are definitely on the right track, because that's going to help us get us to go where we need to go spiritually. Okay. So I ain't got but a few more, minutes, because y'all know what happens. I join my AA meeting either on the phone or in person. Okay. So he says here, right? In time, I learned to investigate these steps in areas of my life which made me uncomfortable, right? My search revealed my parents. I talked about it. Who had been deeply hurt by my isolation from them, right? I shared with you how I felt about my mother. I shared with you some areas about my father, my siblings, right? So when we talk about those we have harmed, right? Those we have harmed. And when we have first recognized the harm we have caused ourselves in one way, shape, form, or fashion, we now can see how we harmed others, right? In his case, he says, my search revealed my parents, whom I had been deeply hurt by my isolation from them, who had been deeply hurt by my isolation from them, right? So how many times in our lives do we, when we blame or when we going through something or we hold resentments, right? We withdraw, we isolate, my mother, listen, she had a lot of sleepless nights. Yes, she did. Yes, she did. Yes, she did. Wondering where I was, what was happening, was I alive, right? So I caused harm to my parents. My father right, afflicted abuse on me because he just couldn't understand what the hell was wrong with me, right? And for my daddy to put his hands on me that way, oh my God. But that's the only way he could what? But we caused harm, okay? And then it says here, right? Right? My employer who worried about my absences, right? Man, listen. Y'all come to these AA meetings, and whether it be open meeting or closed meeting, y'all gonna hear some things, right? I mean, listen, that's why I'm saying, when we make a list, that we not only include people, we have to include organizations, like our employer, right? How many times, right? Did I call out sick? Wasn't sick, I was high. How many times did I fake the funk, right? How many times did I lie? Right? And it got so bad that I would go to work, I would go in the bathroom, and I would get high, right? Smoke all over the place. Then there was a time when going to the bathroom was too long. I would get under my desk and start smoking crack. Are you kidding me? I caused harm to my employer. Okay? So when we do that eighth step, yes, I am willing to make amends to those institutions as well as individuals. Okay? So then he goes on to say, right? My memory lapses, right? My memory lapses. Now, you have people who say they have blackouts, right? And they don't remember what they said or what they did. And it happens, right? And so there were times when my father would forget what he did to my mother or what he said and how he said it. And he'll come back and say, I didn't do that. I did, but the evidence is right there. But anyway, you know what I'm saying? So memory lapses, right? And so when I think about the things that I did and said or found myself in the position of somebody telling me something, it wasn't in a moment I felt ooh. But then I had to go and start drinking again because I didn't want to feel that. I didn't want to believe I did that. I didn't want to believe I said that. And so I start drinking again. Right? Oh my God, this thing is listen. So my memory lapses while drinking, right? My temper. Oh my God. Let's not even go there, right? Let's not even go there, right? And then it says the friends I had shown. Boy, I tell you. My classmates, my friends in the neighborhood, they could not figure out what the hell was wrong with Edwina. Miss Class Vice President, Miss Co-Captain of the cheerleader team, Miss one who is most likely to succeed, the one who wanted to be a model. What in the hell is wrong with Edwina? But guess what? There came a time that I wonder what was wrong with me. See, they didn't know that when I had my moment, I would ask the same question to myself. Edwina, what is wrong with you? All right, so the last thing I want to share here, because I really got to go, right? As I faced the reality of the harm I had done, step 8 took on new meaning. As I faced the reality of the harm I had done, step 8 took on new meaning. See? Yeah. It's all about being set free. It's all about acknowledging what God already knows. It's all about wanting to admit what we already know. And it's all about emptying out this garbage can and stop trying to conceal things that need to be revealed so that we can heal. And it does start with, did not cause harm to anybody, right? And as it said, I definitely caused harm to myself, which made it a lot more easier to admit and face and identify how and what way that I cause harm to others. And the last sentence says, I am no longer uncomfortable and I feel clean and light. Oh my God. That's why, y'all, I can be authentic and transparent. I've been set free from recovery. I have emerged empowered, and I know I'm giving hope to others. Yes, because I found out that there was nothing wrong with me, but there was a lot that had happened to me. Yes, we as human beings cause harm to each other all the time, all day long, in one way, shape, form, or fashion. But those who commit the harm, we are really committing harm to ourselves. So now I understand the 5 agreements when it says, be impeccable with your word. What I say negative to somebody else, I'm really talking about myself. When I judge and criticize somebody else, I'm really judging and criticizing myself. Be impeccable without sin. And I need to also apply that to myself. I no longer said I can't make it, I can't do it. That's a lie. I no longer can say, there's no God, it's just me. That's a lie. I practice stop believing the lies and search for the one and only truth. That my creator created me, created you, created this whole life experience for a purpose, for a reason. And because we were born into a sinful world and have a sinful nature, life's journey is preparing us to be led back to him once we have that knee-bowing experience. And that's why it says our past is our greatest possession. Oh, yes. So when it says here, right? It says here, right? I am no longer uncomfortable and I feel clean and light. Listen, if you don't want to know the truth, don't ask me. If you don't know what I'm thinking, ask me. If you need some clarification, ask me. Because I'm practicing not only the 12 spiritual principles, tools, and resources, but also the 5 agreements. Be impeccable with your word. Don't take anything personally. Don't make any assumptions. Always do your best, right? Be skeptical, but learn to listen. So in my 8-step process, even in recovery, I fall short. And I do cause harm in one way, shape, form, or fashion, even in recovery. But my step 10 says when I am wrong, I promptly admit it. See, before I used to get stuck, right? I stumble, but I'm stumbling forward because I will never be perfect. But I am greatly, appreciatively happy with the progress that I'm making. I no longer want to cause harm to myself or to anybody else. And so if you are like me and want to be set free, listen, thank you for allowing me to come into your heart, your mind, your spirit, and talk about things that are uncomfortable but necessary, that are pathways to freedom, to the truth. Are you kidding me? Make me uncomfortable. Set me free, all right? So I love you, you love me. We are one big old family with a great big hug and a kiss from me to you. Won't you say you love me to ooh. If it's God's will that you and I are rejoined tomorrow, I'll be here. And if it's his will, you will be too. So share this podcast with others. Go back over the years and see how my God has prepared me, molded me, shaped me to touch just one more. But he touched me first underneath that parked car and said, Edwina, I need you. I want you. I could use you. Use me, Lord. Use me, Lord. And I'm so glad he accepts me just the way I am. And guess who does too? Me. Okay? Me. All right. Have a blessed day. Be of service to others. Do your inventory list. Make your list of those you have harmed, starting with yourself. How have you harmed yourself over the years? Right? And list those that you know you have caused harm to in one way, shape, form, or fashion, and become willing to make amends to them all. Have a blessed day. I love you. I love you.